Alright legends, Rufus here, and I'm going to read you a chapter of my book, Pixie Star and the Pocket Watch of Doom, which is book 1 of 9 in the Bud series. So without further ado, here's a chapter! Chapter 1, in which we meet a pixie and a bubblegum troll. Everything was quiet and peaceful, but as sure as up is up and down is down, the pixie hiding in the grass knew that it wouldn't stay that way for very long. Things were behaving in their usual nice and normal way. Fireflies hovered happily, as they do. Moon shadows brushed the forest glade. As can happen, silver light tickled the tops of the long grass as it swayed in the easy breeze, as is usual on calm, clear nights, and a nearby stream went about its business of gently gurgling and trickling between nice, smooth, round rocks and pebbles. It was all run-of-the-mill and heart-warmingly picturesque for a peaceful moonlit forest. That was until a giant, pink, excessively globby, 20-foot-tall monstrosity thumped, banged, and squidged its way through the peace and tranquility. It was a mountainous, blobby hurricane, and seemed to be made up of the sticky stuff you find around the edges of windows in unclean public toilets, but dyed pink. It mashed and blobbed around in a muddled, thunderous fumble as leaves, twigs, and poor unfortunate creatures stuck to its tacky body like flies on glue. Bubblegum trolls are extremely dangerous. They don't mean to be dangerous, you understand. It's just that they don't know what they're doing. Bubblegum trolls aren't actually made of bubblegum. They're made from the bright pink clay that sits at the foot of a mountain, far off on a planet in another dimension. On that particular planet, in that particular dimension, there are constant wild electrical storms, and bubblegum trolls come to life when lightning strikes the clay. Most living things, magical creatures, animals and humans, have parents, but bubblegum trolls don't. Parents are handy for teaching their children how things work in the world, teaching them how to get around, what to eat, how they should behave and all that sort of thing. But because bubblegum trolls don't have parents, they simply don't know what to do with themselves. They just sort of gasp as they are born, give out loud rumbling yelps, and then start thundering around the place trying to figure things out. The first emotions they feel are usually fear and anger, and they mostly tend to stick with those until they run blindly off a cliff or something. Their clay is bright pink, very sticky, and they just sort of glump around at frightening speeds, bumping into things and getting all manner of stuff stuck to them. This particular bubblegum troll, which was heading at breakneck speed for the quiet and peaceful forest glade, had accidentally managed to stand on a very important magical object. And that's where the Pixie Star came in. Because of his ability to fit into the human realm, he was half human, and his love of adventure, danger, and wild times, it was his job to solve certain problems for the magical realms. Every now and then, objects would wander off into the human realm and cause all manner of chaos and havoc. The bubblegum troll had managed to stumble out of its clay 6 months ago. In its confusion, it had fumbled into a fairy glen, where a time-hopping gem was being kept. The gem got stuck in the bottom of his left foot between a very worried squirrel and a bunch of geraniums. Since then, 3 magical realms had lost 4 days each, one lost a Tuesday afternoon, another had a week in August disappear, and the human realm had had October and November vanish in a puff of magic. Which was a bit annoying, as none of the magic folk got to celebrate Halloween, the only time that they could visit the human world without worrying too much about being run away from or screamed at. Star had been tracking the troll for months, but was having problems finding it, as it kept accidentally making time hop around wildly. He was sure that today was the day that he'd catch it and put an end to it all. It had been a long and difficult mission, and he was tired. The forest glade with the babbling stream was in the southwest of England, in a remote and beautiful place with a single house nearby. Star had picked this spot for his trap so as not to involve too many humans. Star picked his teeth with a bit of broken reed. He brought a snack along. It was one of his mum's famous blueberry muffins, and a bit of blueberry skin had lodged itself between his teeth, as being particularly stubborn about coming out. "Blast you," he grumbled. He got to work on the lodged food stuff with the reed with gusto, when suddenly, just as he let his guard down for the first time in 6 months, thunk! Splodge! A giant pink leg hit him in the back with impressive force and swept him up into its stickiness with a mighty whoosh. Star's head whirled, his cheeks flapped in the wind with the force of it. He let out a loud ooft as the gigantic leg stopped dead. The other leg flew past him as the troll blindly ran through the glade, ripping up grass, knocking down trees, sending birds jetting off into the night sky in search of safety. Fireflies darted around in panic, and the babbling stream jumped into the air as the troll's foot crashed into it. Star had just managed to catch his breath when, woofed, he shot forward like an astronaut in a rocket. The air rushed past his ears as the huge pink leg hurled him forward again, stealing his breath and making his eyes water. It took a good 3 massive strides before Star managed to grit his teeth and take some action. The leg thumped down. This was his chance. He only had a second before he was thrown forward again. He took a deep breath, clenched his jaw, and with a massive effort, thwap! His pixie wings sprang out from his back. He'd hoped the force of his wings being popped out like that would have been enough to break him free of the clay, but no. All it did was force his wings deep into the leg of the creature, sticking him even more firmly to the marauding pink monster, and then, just as before, his stomach did swirling, sickening turns as the leg flew forward at a shocking speed. He wasn't going to be able to take much more of this before the force of the movements made him pass out. He had little more than 2, maybe 3 strides before he fainted. The leg whomped to a stop again, and it took Star a second to right himself, grit his teeth, take a deep breath, and muster all of his strength. Pixies have many different talents, just like humans do, except their talents tend to be a bit more surprising than ours. Some people are good at science, others are really bendy and can put their legs over their heads. Some are good at art, and others at running or throwing stones at cans from far away. Everyone has at least one thing they're good at, and pixies are the same, except with magic. One of Star's talents was to let off powerful explosions of light that threw out huge gusts of air. He could make them fly out of his fingers, or, in really tricky situations, he could make them explode out of his entire body. This took a huge amount of energy, however, and he didn't really like doing it too often, as it made him weak and shaky. Every muscle in Star's body tensed up, his eyes were squeezed tightly closed, his fists were clenched, and then, with a deafening crack, light and wind burst from him. The light was so bright that it would have made the sun jealous, and the wind so strong that the 20-foot-tall, blobby, pink, sticky creature flew skyward, coming down a full minute later with a giant, thudding splodge, sending shockwaves through the forest. A minute passed, with the troll lying there not moving, and everything went strangely silent. It stayed silent for a while, then a bit longer. Then the monster grumbled. Star had passed out. Just as the monster grumbled, he woke, and managed to raise his head a little to see what had happened to the bubblegum troll. To Star's horror, it was getting up. Actually, it wasn't just getting up. It was getting up rather angrily, and making a lot of very unpleasant grumbly and furious noises. Star's best effort hadn't stopped the thing at all. No, he had only annoyed it. A lot. "Okay," said Star weakly to himself, wheezing and struggling to his feet. That's not good." The troll charged at him, making the very ground shudder in fear. Star pondered. "This is why you never fight a bubblegum troll." He jumped to his feet, breathed deep, and leapt back into the air, his wings flapping frantically and wrestling him from the troll's charge. Lightning fired out of his fingers, stunning the lolloping bubblegum troll, but not enough to stop it, as they both knuckled down for a long, tricky fight. Thanks for listening to that, and before you hang around and listen to the funny noises that I make when I make mistakes all the way through the reading, you might want to think about going to rufuscribbles.com. There's links to a YouTube channel, there's merch, there's all sorts of stuff. You can buy books. You can buy this book. So, yeah, go along to rufuscribbles.com, and now here's some funny noises. He wasn't going to be able to take... So, because of his ability to fix... Star had been tricking... A giant pink leg hit him in the back with impressive force and swept him up into its... He wasn't going to be able to take this much more. He wasn't going to be able to take... And managed to raise his head a little to see what the... Making... So again, thank you so much for listening. The next episode will be out as soon as I can record it. It might be later on today. It might be next week. Depends on how I go. But I'll get it out as soon as I can. And remember, go to rufuscribbles.com and, you know, look around there, do some things, have some fun. Also, you can sign up for a newsletter and get, you know, deals and information and all sorts of nonsense. All right. Thanks again. You're awesome. Cheers, legends.